2, 1. All right, everybody, welcome back. This week is episode 93 of the Omnic Lab. We're a podcast that focuses on the strategies inside the game of Overwatch. We hope you learn through trial and error in a lab format, even if things get a bit crazy and blow up sometimes. That's why you bring in some experts. This week, we're going deep yet again. We are completing the roster right before we get spoiled with a brand new hero. We brought on the man, the myth, the legend, Moira Master. We have Fu. What's up, Fu?
What's up? I'm both a man, a myth, and a legend. And it's fitting to have Moira here in the lab. She'll be right at home, so let's get into it.
Finally we're bringing a scientist.
Finally a scientist.
Yeah. Hey, Winston takes offense in the distance.
Winston had his moment to shine.
Yeah. Now we have a real female scientist doing some work in here. Although you could kind of work Mercy as somewhat of a scientist, but she's more in the nursing field. But anyways, Fu's been to GM many, many times, so he is more than qualified to do this. He's also a coach on the free coaching Discord called Wawa's Bootcamp. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But before we do, let's meet the other host of the show. I'm your host, Rob May, and I'm coming in from Japan and all the way from Georgia, watching some Overwatch League on his phone in the background, just so he can get those sweet, sweet tokens. We have Andres Gomez. What's up, Andres?
Listen, man, I have to run the stream. I have to be doing the podcast. I can't be taking up any resources off of my computer. I have to find other ways around. So yeah, I'm streaming Overwatch League from my phone right next to me. But hey, you gotta get those tokens somehow. They're stingy with them. They only give you one per game.
They are. Yeah, one per map. Well, guys, we have a quick update for you before we get started, along with one of our sponsors of this week. So let's get into it. So first off, we have our game night recap was awesome. One of the bigger ones that we've had, as per usual. But now it's really interesting when we don't have a holiday going on. We're actually able to get about the same numbers now as far as people coming in, because Andres and I have been trying to get it to be way more consistent. Always the last Friday of every month is kind of our shtick now, even if we can't make it. So, Andres, how did your lobbies go?
It went really good. Mine went on forever. I think I started my lobby around 8 or 9, and I went to bed at 4 in the morning, and there were still people joining the lobby. And after like 3:30 in the morning, I was like, okay, guys, I gotta go. I can't keep doing this. I'm like falling asleep on the keyboard. It's been really fun. I hadn't played Overwatch for that long in a long time, and it's fun, to be able to just go to town, grind some Overwatch with your friends. By the time I felt like I was in the flow, we had like some awesome competition in our lobby. We had Never Clutch, which I don't know why his name is Never Clutch, because he is always clutching it, man. That guy was pulling out some amazing stuff. And yeah, we just had a bunch of players, some new faces. I was glad to play with everyone. This lobby, it was like your experience that you had last time, where most of the people in there I didn't know at all, or I had played with very little. So it was great because I got to get out of my comfort zone, meet new friends, new alliances.
We switched roles because I had the comfort pick lobby. I had a lot of familiar faces in mine, and I finally got a chance. I told Yanthrax he wasn't allowed to come unless he played in my lobby. So we got a couple games in together, and that was a lot of fun. And I played with Good Apollo, one of our Diamond sponsors, along with quite a few other people that were rotating in and out, and my duo queue partner when he's on the right shift of his office shift. Usually we'll duo queue. That's Jan. He was on the show. So it's good to play with them. I got word from our Xbox guys and girls, as well as our console guys over at PlayStation, that they had a pretty big turnout, especially on the PlayStation side this time around. So that was really good to hear. But yeah, just keep in mind, it was on the 23rd, which means we're going to push it to the end of March is kind of what we're hoping for, unless things don't pan out. But the plan is, even if Andres and I aren't there, the game night will go on. So just keep that in mind. All right. On to sponsors. Top Score Solutions. Ben, a.k.a. I Need Peeling, is offering free business consultation in the esports field. If you're an aspiring coach, starting a team, developing an app or service, trying to boost your subscriber base, just want to work in esports, you can visit his website at topscoresolutions.com. Find him on Twitter at Topscore Esports, or join his Discord, which is also linked on both locations. Ben has a master's in sports management and business and marketing experience. His services are free, and they will stay so as long as the things allow it. I mentioned last week how I was going to have a little moment at the end of game night where I had to bow out to go talk with the team that I had actually applied for an open invitation to go hang out with some guys and become a coach for a squad, and it's still going, and I'm in their Discord, and we're working on stuff. We got a tournament coming up this week, and it's been a lot of fun. I've been really, really enjoying it, and kudos to Ben for allowing us to use his service, even though it's free to everyone. Getting into it firsthand and having people reach out and communicate with people has been really nice. We also have another individual that has contacted us to potentially be a guest on the show, so it's already paying in dividends, and we're currently working more towards that. Andres, do you want to let the people know what's going on with Omnic Meta?
Yeah, absolutely. As always, you can always go to Omnic Meta to catch Switch's latest articles on how the meta is evolving. He has a bunch of really cool stuff over there. Lately, he's been doing console reports on the Mercy death. Is it true or is it not true? You also have Owl rankings. You have Owl team rankings. And yeah, his latest article is just about the Mercy. So head on over there. Check all of his articles. He does a great job in putting everything down to the charts, giving you the stats, giving you the hard numbers, so you can actually see if your meta predictions are true or you're just imagining that all the Moira mains are coming out of the bushes.
All right. I think it's time to take a quick break out of the normal sponsorship type gig and talk with Fu. So Fu, tell us a little bit about yourself. What brought you to gaming? What brought you to Overwatch? What brought you to support? And maybe some aspirations that you have as you continue your goals in Overwatch.
All right. Well, yeah, I've basically been a primarily gamer as my hobby as long as I can remember. Been into all types of game. I've mostly like genre hopped. I was never like, oh, I play shooters or oh, I play RTS. I've kind of hopped from one genre to another. I dabbled in SC2, and then I got into League for quite a while. Did a lot of League, even coached a little bit in there as well. And then I shifted gears to a game normally not mentioned on Twitch, Project M. No ban, please, Nintendo. Mod for Melee, or excuse me, for Brawl, to make it a bit more like Melee. Was highly competitive in my state in there, and now I've kind of come over to Overwatch and can apply a lot of what I've learned through playing kind of 1v1 or in like a team dynamic in League or in that to like get a really good feel for what my opponent's going to do and be very analytical over the game as a whole is something I really learned, and the right mindset to improve as playing those games growing up, because I used to be a rager. I used to rage hard and get angry, but eventually I kind of channeled that like intense self-criticism into being able to analyze what I'm doing wrong, how to improve it. Instead of playing to win, just playing to improve, right, and always being able to accomplish that goal.
It's a small change of mentality, but I think it makes a huge difference when you make it.
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial. As for what brought me to support, that's actually a very interesting question. I hadn't really thought too much about it. I started off as a Soldier 76 one trick, and then I kind of branched out into Zarya, all quick play at first, and then I picked up Zenyatta. I wanted to have one of every role, and then I just started playing Zen a bit more because no one ever played support. So it was a bit annoying to never have a healer. And then I picked up Ana. And then I picked up Lucio, and then suddenly I was a support-only player. So, just one day.
I feel like that's the story of every support, though.
I think I would have wound up with it either way, even if I wasn't kind of forced into it, because support really... playing League of Legends, I was either like a support or the mid lane mage. I was always like in the back of the fight, or even an AD carry, like with, total control over how engaged or not I am. And I always enjoy being in the very far back with full vision of the fight, being able to control every aspect of it without going with blind intuition and gut feeling like a main tank player or just raw mechanical reflexes as a DPS might.
Yeah, as a support, you definitely have to have your own mentality there, because like you're saying, you're not trying to lead the charge, you're not trying to like clutch it with huge mechanical skills, but you are trying to keep everyone alive, and you're trying to make everyone do the best that they can at their own jobs. And it's a slightly different mentality than playing some of the other classes.
Yeah, it's a bit glorious, because if I do my job right, you'll barely know I'm there.
But if you don't do it right, everyone's dying.
Oh yeah, everyone will know.
Yeah,
everyone will immediately know.
Well, let's close out the discussion here by appreciating a few other people who are the supports of the show. So let's go over to our diamond sponsors. We have Ben K, Christoplaya, Good Apollo, Golden Soldier A, Great Root Bear of the 5 Deadly Venoms in New York. We have Jeff B, Kip, Lysum, Magic, Never Clutch, Not Meta, Jan Jinkle, Ricky Tiki, Shazir, Top Score Solutions, of course, and Tragic Zach. Along with our brand new patron this month, we have Caroline C. Thank you guys so much for your support.
Caroline.
New and old, you guys are helping us make the dream work. You're helping us consider our finances an option to get to BlizzCon, especially in my end, where it is triple the cost of typical attendees that are stateside. So let's
help
get into
this man
talking
rent
about
a giant kayak.
Somebody please hire the the carrier pigeons, European.
Well, you're getting a lot of carrier pigeons to carry you.
They'll buy a lot, dude. They're expensive.
I think gulls would be more efficient. All right.
Let's get you into talking about Moira. Now, this is gonna be, I'm gonna do a little disclaimer. Fu does a lot of regular coaching. So he's going to get into his rhythm, which means Andres and I are really not going to be talking a whole lot at the beginning here, because Fu has his whole like agenda that he goes through. But we're trying to work it in so that we have a little bit of our style, a little bit of his style kind of overlapping. But we're going to mention what Fu likes to call the goals of the hero. Like, how do you enable yourself for success, and what are the things, the baselines that you need to do in order to achieve what's called the skill floor, or the base minimum in which you can be effective on a given hero. But without further ado, Fu, took us away.
Yeah, with as I mentioned before, with having the mindset to improve, an extremely important part of that is knowing your goals as a hero. One of the big problems with Overwatch, in my perspective, is that the support class, compared to the others, gives very little feedback as to how well you're doing. If you're playing McCree or Tracer, you feel how well you're doing, and you'll naturally kind of Pavlovian style navigate your way through doing better, because it feels bad when you're doing bad, and it feels good when you do the good thing. But support just feels the same. You have to be very consciously aware of what you're trying to accomplish, and if you can focus on a couple of the things at a time, you can much more quickly improve. So Moira is a very paradoxically complex and simple character, where there's a lot to her, but she doesn't actually do a whole lot. She has two things: healing and damage. That's it. That's all she really does. And so we'll look into her goals revolving around that. Number one is going to be outputting as much key healing as possible during a fight. It's first important to note that her healing is dramatically more powerful than her damage. Her damage at 50 per second is the lowest in the game in terms of a weapon damage, unless you count Symmetra Uncharged Beam, which is slightly lower. And her healing, however, at 80 HP per second is just under Ana. However, it is area of effect and can heal multiple people. And when you combine it with her healing orb, she can have the highest single target healing in the game without an ultimate. Combining it with being area of effect. Yeah, she outputs so much healing, it's absolutely absurd. She really needs to, because she doesn't have utility and she doesn't have a lot of damage. So that's what you're mostly going to be focused on. So what's key healing? You'll notice I said that. Well, key healing is specifically healing that either prevents a teammate from dying or keeps them in the fight. This is distinguished from just, keeping your tank at full health, because there will often be times where, even though you're healing your tank who's taking damage, if you let your McCree sit at 50 HP, he's going to have to go run off and hide.
Right.
And then he's not going to be fighting. And then you're going to be like, why is my DPS so bad? Why can't I climb? My DPS are always terrible. Well, that's because they're behind you, cowering in a corner at 30 HP, because you are healing your tank over anyone else.
And, I'm really glad that you brought that up because it is quite a distinction that you gotta make. Just because you're healing something doesn't mean that you're healing the right thing. And as a healer, you do have to differentiate and prioritize all the other people and decide who needs it the most. Who should I focus on my main thing right now?
It's that also goes to targets.
Yeah, that's a good like point of comparison, because if you're healing the right target versus the wrong target, unless you are actively aware of what is the right target, it will feel exactly the same. It gives the same sound feedback, it gives the same everything. If you prevent someone from dying, there's no rescue medal like an elimination that tells you that they would have died if you didn't heal them. Whereas with damage, you can usually tell that you're damaging the right target because they died. If you damage someone and they died pretty soon, chances are you were hitting the right target, or at least a good enough target.
Or at the right time, yeah.
And you won't notice that someone died because you weren't healing them.
And just to throw an example there for everyone listening, an example of prioritizing is, let's say your Reinhardt is at half health, but he is in a corner where he's surrounded mostly by teammates. Maybe there's a big health pack close by. His shield is full health, so he's not really taking any damage, and everyone who's shooting at him might be at a pretty far away range, so he's not in mortal danger, even though he's half HP. But then you have maybe your McCree, like you said, or your Ana right next to you, which is getting dove by a Tracer, and they need immediate attention. So even though your Reinhardt might seem like he should be a good target to be healing, your attention should be on the person who's getting dove at that time to prevent them from dying. Reinhardt, you can save him later.
That's great. That's actually almost the exact example I normally use, even down to the Reinhardt and the McCree. Not the being dove by Tracer, but that's a good point, because you have to keep in mind what decides who you heal. Not including role, like, you know, or individual hero. What status determines who you heal? Is it whoever's missing the most health? Well, no, because as you mentioned in that Reinhardt example, the Reinhardt was missing more HP, but that McCree needed healing more. So that means whoever is at risk of dying suddenly becomes important. Well, let's say instead of a Tracer, that McCree got Roadhog hooked into their whole team. He is at an even higher risk of dying. That means he's a higher priority healing, right? Well, no, obviously not. He's done. He's dead. He's not getting out.
Good as dead.
Yeah, so you heal whoever, regardless of role, whoever is dramatically higher in terms of the following statistics. 1, having lower health. 2, being at risk of dying. And 3, if you think you can save them, like the odds that you can keep them alive. And if people are on
just a quick timeout. This is not Moira specific for any stretch. This is support class goals. Before we even get into Moira, like, this is the baseline, okay?
Yeah, you need to know this for Moira. This isn't like not Moira. This is absolutely Moira, but it's also like Mercy, Ana, Zen. So that gets us into actually role-specific stuff, because that is who you heal regardless of role. But what if there's that Ana and the McCree both being dove by Winston? Who do you choose there? So getting into that, the priority, assuming there are multiple people in that similar range, will be the following. 1, your fellow healer. The main reason for Moira specifically is that you will be able to output more healing and be able to maintain your resource better if you have another healer. So by keeping them alive, they will be able to help you do your job much more easily. The second reason, a bit less important for Moira because she's so survivable, but more important for other supports, is that they're the only one who can heal you, which is something that is extremely important. You need both supports to keep you alive. That's why the main healer, off healer dynamic has developed and stayed so consistent throughout the history of Overwatch. You need that just little bit of healing from that Zenyatta or that Lucio to prevent the Ana or the Mercy from getting chipped and whittled down to death, to allow them to output the primary amount of healing. And then instead of having a lot of healing, they provide value through utility. So Moira is absolutely a main healer in this equation. But anyway, that brings us to the second priority, which is any other squishy hero, which just means DPS or Symmetra, depending on how you count her. The reason that DPS are a higher priority than tanks is very important to note. If you have a DPS hero that starts taking damage, that's a significant amount of damage, not like, you know, a couple soldier bullets, but like a far rocket. That McCree gets hit by a far rocket now. We're bullying this McCree. He is getting lit up. he is going to do one of three things. He's either A, going to die, which, you know, obviously it's not optimal. B, he is going to hide at low health until he gets healed enough to go into the fight. Or 3, he is going to run and get a health pack, which basically means he died, because he is not going to be contributing for that fight until he gets back, and fights don't last that long. So he is going to be out for a significant portion of the fight, which means pretty much any healing we output onto a DPS is going to be key healing. And what's nice about getting key healing on DPS is that damage they provide applies pressure to the enemy team, which makes it harder for them to run over your tank line and gives them something more to focus on. Because if that DPS is taking damage, that's someone who could be shooting that tank you were going to heal instead. So you're helping your tank stay alive as well. So
I think it's like a great synergy, and I'm so glad that you brought that up too, because it's like the rock, paper, scissors interaction. Like, you think that your tanks should be the priority a lot of the time, but if you're keeping your damage dealers alive, and even, for example, to a tracer or to a McCree, just giving them a little bit of healing, can make the whole difference between them winning that duel or not. You don't even have to like top him off all the time, but sometimes when you get that Zenyatta orb for like a second or two on Genji, you're like, oh yes, I didn't immediately die, and it allows you to get in and get out and cause so much more havoc that it alleviates a lot of the pressure on your tanks.
Yeah, with the rock, paper, scissors thing, I wish I could agree, but it's more like that jank rock, paper, scissors you played in kindergarten when it was a cool edgy thing that had like Spock hand and nuke. And it's just, I don't even know. No one knows. It's too complicated. I guess the support helps the tank that helps the DPS that also helps the tank that also helps. Like, everyone helps each other.
Is that like a rock, paper,
giant
scissors?
web of helping.
Yeah, but more like a circular web of like motion. Yeah, like of helpfulness. Yeah. Like I help the DPS, the DPL helps my tanks, and the tanks help me.
And then everyone helps each other in one way or another.
And everyone
Tanks keep supports is live just as much as the other way around, and even DPS.
Right. Oh man, this is like Overwatch Utopia.
But yeah, that leaves tanks as the lowest priority, which is going to be very controversial. I'm sure there are a lot of people listening to this right now who's like, oh my god, they got this dumb guest on. As a healer, you heal tanks. That's your number one job. Hold on, son. Hold on. Well, hear me out. So tanks have giant HP bars, and usually either some combination of high mobility, high self-defense, or self-healing, something like that. Like your defensive matrix, your bubbles, your shields, your Roadhog vapes. And that means that if they start taking damage, they're not done for. They have ways to either sustain or protect themselves, keep themselves in the fight, get out of there alive. They're not just going to suddenly die. And if they do suddenly die, well, what were you going to do? So
I think
let's rewind for a second.
Before we continue here too, if your tanks are in a position where they took so much damage that they died like that, I would say that at some point it was their mistake, right? If your Reinhardt charged in to the point where you had to deploy all of your resources on just him and he died, that might have been a positional error of him. If your Winston dove in when he didn't have his shield in a manner that he couldn't get out, or he dove into the middle of the enemy team in a way that it was really easy for the enemy team to just focus fire him and kill him before he could dive out, I would say that that's a mistake on your Winston and not so much on the healer.
So I'm glad you said it like that, because that's another fallacy I want to point out that is almost universal throughout the Overwatch community, especially for the purposes of OQ. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. Who cares? It doesn't matter. If it was the Reinhardt's fault, doesn't matter if it's your fault. The fault doesn't matter. You're just trying to win the game with your teammates. So what is actually important to think about in that perspective is rewinding a bit to what I said about the role regardless healing priority is for key healing, you need that person to be savable. If that tank just dies, they weren't savable. You couldn't have saved them. So they're not a priority healing target regardless of their role, because they were doomed to begin with. It doesn't matter if it's their fault that they got there, if it was the enemy team making a really good play that got them there, if it was your DPS who baited them in, or your other tank that missed the bubble on them. It doesn't really matter. Just all that matters is that they're doomed. You can't help them. Play to win. But again, looking back at that healing priority, you may think, oh, well, you have to heal tanks the most. What's this guy talking about? Well, roll regardless, you will be healing the person who's taking damage, at risk of dying, and is savable. And 90% of the time, that's your tank above anyone else. you will be healing your tanks more than anyone else. You just need to acknowledge that they're the lowest priority for when other people start taking damage. That's a huge support fallacy.
It's when the
that's
overlap
so pervasive.
happens.
Just because you heal tanks the most doesn't mean they're the highest priority. They're your day-to-day operations that you just go by normally, but once your building's on fire, you finishing your essay is not on the priority more just because you normally do it. You need to deal with that fire and then get back to writing your essay.
Right. It's almost like the DPS and these other healer around you are the people who deserve your most attention because they're going to be the priority targets of the enemy team. While your tanks, you know that they can take some damage. You know, they're not made of glass. They can sustain a little bit of pain, and then you can focus on them when appropriate. And obviously, they're gonna get the biggest percentage of healing because their HP bars are huge, and you know you can take your time healing them. But the other people can't afford that luxury. They need to be taken care of immediately.
Yes.
Now,
otherwise, they're just going to die, and that's going to be bad for your tanks regardless.
We got to keep this moving, guys. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go over what the kit is that Moira does, and then we're going to break into supporting as Moira specifically. So she has a Biotic Grasp is the name of her primary and secondary fire. The primary version is the Heal Spray that has a 15-meter range. This is something we're going to end up mentioning a lot. You have a very far range for this. And you also have a secondary range, which is 21 meters for the damage beam of connecting. It's very similar to a latch-on effect that needs to be constant. You can pump both of these, and that'll be some significant function in how you acquire and spend your resource, as well as manage those, but I'll have Fu cover that when we get to it. Then we have the Biotic Orb, which is the heal and the damage. The damage is less than the healing, and both in total and in damage per second, than the healing per second and the totality of the healing. The orbs will be spent, and they tether to allies and or enemies, depending on if it's healing or damage. And the tethers slow the orb speed way down.
Yeah, down to walking speed.
Spend the resource. Yes, about walking speed.
Exactly.
Then we have the shift, which is the alternate. So Biotic Orb on PC is E, Fade is shift by default. This gives you an insane speed boost. I believe it's a little faster than a Lucio speed boost if I did the
much
calculations
faster.
Right.
18.75 meters per second off the top of my head, which is quite fast, we'll say.
It's almost as fast as if you were to go from one place to another instantaneously, but you have a little bit of realm of slowing it down so you have directional control. It's basically
it's a little under 4 times walking speed.
Okay, and this is on a 6-second cooldown and only lasts 0.8 seconds. Then the ultimate is called Coalescence, which deals 70 damage per second and double that on healing, 140 healing per second. And we're going to get to this because a lot of people think that Coalescence is a purely damage-based ability for whatever reason. So we'll get into that later, but Fu, take us away here. What is the role of Moira, and how does she maximize this kit?
All right, that's what I thought we were doing earlier, but okay, I'll just start over. So Moira's first goal is here. No, Moira's absolutely a main healer. She doesn't have any utility like a Zenyatta or a Lucio, and her damage is nowhere near as high as someone like Zenyatta. In order to, even Lucio can out DPS her, and his DPS is quite lacking in general. So she just deals in healing overall. That's all she really can do. That's what sets her apart from the other heroes. If it wasn't for her extremely powerful healing, there'd be no reason to play her over someone like Mercy or even Ana. So I guess I'll go into the second goal then. The first one, of course, being outputting key healing during a fight. The second one is going to be farming your ultimate as fast as possible. So I'm actually going to impromptu quiz you guys. No cheating. How do you think so you know that ultimates are charged via points, and like 1 point is 1 damage. Healing is a bit different, and then it charges over time a bit. How many points do you think it requires for Moira to get her ultimate relative to the rest of the cast? Where would you put it?
She seems like she's on the faster side, more like what pre-Sunbrenner would seem like. Are we talking about
like properly? I believe it's the same. It's the same as most heroes in general. It's about in the mid.
So you think it's in the middle, and you think it's on the faster end.
side, yeah.
Okay. It is the second most points required for any ultimate in the game. Only Lucio requires more points.
Interesting.
However, Moira just outputs numbers. She doesn't rely on utility like Zenyatta or Lucio. Zenyatta and Lucio don't get ultimate charge for speed boost and Discord Orb. Ana just doesn't output much damage or numbers, but Moira can throw out this 200 damage ball that almost always will get that full 210% of her ult charge out. Her healing is just absolutely massive. 80 per second
can hit
plus
multiple targets at the same time.
Yeah, so you can get like 160 per second with a resource, throw out an orb, that could be another 300 points. So it is both one of the fastest and one of the slowest charging ultimates in the game. It's important to know this because it's not something you just get. You have to work for it. The more actively you farm it, the faster you get it. But you will not get it quickly if you are trying to tickle people with your right click all game and you're not actively throwing out those orbs on cooldown. So you need to very actively farm it. The best way you can do this is in between fights, use your damage orb, throw it towards the enemy team as often as possible when you don't have your ultimate. This will give you about 10% of your ultimate. Bear in mind, if they have a D.Va can eat it, and it's not worth doing then. And as well as making sure that you are using your left click to heal people up. If people start taking significant damage, I'll say more than 200 total from poke in between fights, you can go ahead and use a healing orb instead to conserve your resource. You can also, one thing I wanted to mention earlier, conserving your resources is extremely important. You generally don't want to dip below 3/4 of your resource in between fights. And you can do this by just tapping your left click a bit, and that will heal for about 60 to like 55 to 60, depending on how long you held it down. If you just hold it for the briefest moment, over 3 seconds. The lingering is 16.6 HP per second for 3 seconds to 50. And that will be the most efficient way to just keep your team sustained, charge your ultimate without burning through your resource.
Let's talk a little bit about that before we move any further. Let's talk about the resource, because it's an integral part of playing Moira, and it's not as intuitive. I remember the first few times that I jumped in Moira, I was finding myself out of resource, and I was like, oh, it kind of caught me off guard. I was like, oh, I actually do have to manage this a little bit. I can't just heal willy-nilly whoever I want. I have to kind of be mindful with it. So let's talk a little bit about how you manage the resource, how you gain it back, maybe some ways that you watch out for it, and why do you say is appropriate to always keep it to at least a third full?
So the way her resource works mechanically is that when you're holding down left click, it will deplete over 9 seconds from full. And if you use your alternate fire, on an enemy hero, it will not work on enemy barriers. It will damage it, but it won't recharge it. It will take also 9 seconds to recharge to full. However, there's a neat little trick I'll just mention as a side, where if you spam the button as fast as you can, it will, up to a point, give you 1 tick per every time you press it, which can charge it significantly faster, though you will be sacrificing almost all of your damage.
Interesting.
That's a neat little trick you can try. It's very difficult, and it's a marginal advantage unless you got some serious Mario Party APM going on.
So is it something that maybe you want to do when you desperately need your resource and the damage is going to be negligible kind of thing?
Yeah. Which
like
is
if a
generally
Roadhog's
most
in front
of
of you healing, you just like click him a couple times to get your resource out and hopefully do it.
Oh, I wish it was a couple. You got to hit that thing hard and fast, man. It hurts. But yeah, that's mostly how you're going to use your alternate fire. As I mentioned before, her damage is not what she does. It's just kind of there. So most of the time you're going to be using your alt fire. It will be to get more healing, or for key damage, which is, of course, if key healing is keeping people alive or in the fight, key damage is damage that would either kill someone or force them out of the fight.
Awesome.
And the reason I say 3/4 of your resource you should have, you shouldn't use more than that in between fights, is just purely out of my personal experience. Maybe with a different playstyle that's also as effective, it might not exactly be that number. Just in my experience, if I use more than that going into a fight, I will run out. and it is very bad when you run out of resource. It's not like running out of ammo on Ana, where you just, I can't heal for another couple seconds. It's like, nope, your teammates are SOL. They can't get healed. You've gone dry. You got to stay hydrated.
And I think
you got to manage that.
It's a good rule of thumb to have because you can't predict everything in Overwatch, right? There are going to be times in every match where you're going to be caught by surprise, and it can be anything. And you don't want to be caught by surprise with your pants down, whether it be a teammate that got jumped and maybe you just didn't have the healing at the moment, or your tank suddenly got scattered and he's in critical health and you just didn't have anything to heal him with. It's just a nice little rule of thumb to be like, have that reserve. So if anything goes wrong, you got your healing.
And keep in mind that you have about 45 seconds for doing nothing is about how long it takes to recharge it at all, which is like 3 times. Or no. It's over 4. It's like 4 times. Is that right?
It's eternity. That's all you really need to know. Yeah, it's forever.
It takes forever.
I have on multiple occasions after a 1 team fight thrown myself into the abyss so that I can charge my resource back up.
And if you don't have anyone to damage, you're not recharging that anytime soon. That's the thing to keep in mind. Does your damage orb recharge your healing?
It does not. That's something that I'm glad you brought that up. It does not recharge. For that reason, this is another aside pro tip. If you have to heal and damage at the same time, you want to throw healing orb and then use your right click for damage so that you gain resource, because you'll do about the same thing by throwing damage orb and left clicking, except you will be expending resource instead of gaining it.
Right. That's a great little tip. Yeah, if you're low on resource or if you're trying to save up some resource, because honestly, your damage orb is nice, but it's avoidable, right? Like, it'll be a nuisance for the enemy team. It's great for charging up your ultimate, but getting a kill with your damage orb means that you either clutched out the orb and the enemy team had nothing against it, or the enemy team was just really careless.
Yeah, it's pretty pathetic. It does 50 damage per second, same as your alt fire, and it up to 200. So if the enemy just completely ignores it, it can kill someone. But realistically, you can just walk out of it. You can eat it. Multiple people can do it. It's not a good ability. If you just had Moira's damage orb without the option to pick heal, I'd say it'd pretty comfortably be the single worst ability in the entire game. Moira's damage orb is not good. It is very good for charging ultimate, and it can be very useful for key damage, or occasionally like throwing it in a hallway to like prevent someone from being in there anymore.
Yeah, but, like a Tracer, a Genji, they think it's flanking. You can throw it down there, and it's super annoying against them, especially if you're by yourself, a flanker that is by itself. The orb actually does a very significant amount of damage, where as a Genji, you might have to back out and find a health pack, delaying that attack quite a bit.
It's very good against Genji cats, which are I call them Genji cats because you throw the ball of yarn and they'll pounce on it to try and hit it. A lot of Genjis, like if you're like, I don't want that Genji to have deflect, I'll just throw my damage orb somewhere near them, and he's like, I gotta deflect it.
Yeah.
Even though he already has Dragon Blade, it doesn't matter. It's like, just throw the yarn at the cat.
Because it's so annoying as Genji. You can't do anything about it, right? You can move as much as
I think their eyes just light up. It just feels good to them. I don't think they think. I think they're just like, I'm going to reflect it.
Maybe that is it. I've been a victim of it too. Let's talk a little bit about the orb now that we're here, so we can move on with that one. When you're trying to choose between healing and damage, we know that the damage orb is great for charging up your ultimate. We already mentioned that healing is great to use if you're running low on resource and you want to recharge a little bit while still healing your team. But aside from those two situations, is there any other tips or any other rules of thumb that you use on deciding which one to use?
Yeah, I've got a really good rule of thumb, which is the rule of default and exception, where if you have 2 things to choose from, whether it be Moira's heal versus damage orb or Mercy's heal versus damage beam or damage boost beam, you can treat one as the default state, where you just are going to use that, and then the other as an exception. So you don't have to think about when do I use this and when do I use this. You just have to think about when to use that. So her healing orb is absolutely the default. At the start of a team fight, you basically always want to throw a healing orb out the second you think it will be useful, because it is just far more powerful on a numbers basis. Healing on a 1-to-1 ratio with damage, healing is far more powerful. If you look at, like, most people would say Mercy's healing beam is about as powerful as like McCree's pistol, but McCree's pistol is 140 DPS and Mercy's healing is 60 HPS. yet they're about the same. So with Moira's orbs, her healing orb heals more and more per second than the damage one. And it has more value because it's healing and not damage. So it's extremely important to remember that. So you look for a reason like, when can I damage orb? Not when can I healing orb. So healing orb is great, as I mentioned. If you see people taking significant damage, you don't want to burn all your resource on them. Again, about more than 200, because that's where you'll get the same amount from healing orb that you would from your optimal damage orb. Whereas with damage orb, it's basically just throw it on cooldown every single time in between team fights, trying to make sure you have it at the start of a fight. Because you can get so much healing per second on one target with healing orb and your left click. Off the top of my head, 155 healing per second, which is more than coalescence.
Yeah, that's great.
It's nuts. Other than that, again, throw it in a hallway, throw it to contest a Widowmaker on high ground for just a couple seconds. Just always remember the general rule with orb is that you want to throw it level to the ground so that it'll bounce off of one wall and go where you want it. If you think too far ahead of that, you're probably wasting your time. And if you throw it down or up a little, it will wind up in the skybox and be useless.
Yeah, you don't
also
want it to be
beware
that
of brick walls. You'll hit the little crevice in the brick wall and it'll just go straight up for some reason because Blizzard polish.
Interesting. Yeah, weird angles or stuff like that in like little details.
Simple geometry.
Oh yeah, the way Blizzard codes it, they even though you glide up stairs, every single stair is coded for the collision exactly how it looks, and the same goes for brick walls. Every little crevice in that brick wall, even though it could and should just be a flat wall, they coded collision in the crevices. So if you throw it in just the right spot, it'll hit the corner of a brick and then go up.
There you go. Don't throw it at weird surfaces. Try use flats.
Yes.
All right, that's awesome. Let's talk about the fade. We haven't talked about the fade, which I think it's
Actually,
very
can
important.
I just very briefly go through some interactions with
with the orbs
absolutely.
Yeah.
So interactions with orb that are important to know. It will ignore all barriers and structures, stuff like Junkrat tire or trap or mine, Torb turret, Symmetra turrets, barriers. It will ignore all of that stuff and just go through it like it's nothing with the damage orb. It will, of course, latch onto enemies. However, if that enemy is invulnerable in any way, either via something like Wraith Form, Transcendence, or Zarya Bubble, it will also ignore them. It will only damage them if it can damage them, and it won't slow down or latch on or anything unless it can. If it is dealing damage to an armored target, it will deal half the damage per second. However, it still will deal the full 200 eventually. It won't expend 50 per second and deal 25. It will just deal the 25.
Oh,
as for
it's just like a slower rate of damage transfer?
Yes. As for healing orb, it will also ignore invulnerable teammates unless they are, if they're not healable. So if you have something like Transcendence, it will ignore them. If you have a full HP teammate, it will ignore them. If you have someone in Wraith Form or Zarya Bubble, you can heal them, so it won't ignore them. However, in Fade, you're not healable, so your own orb will ignore you in Fade. In terms of like if you just threw your orb and then like faded past it.
Mm-hmm.
And if a teammate is purple, this is the very interesting interaction. The anti-heal effect from Anna's grenade, otherwise known as purple, it will latch on, it will make the sound and seem like it's healing them, it'll slow down, but it won't heal them, of course, but it also won't expend any resource. I think that was something specifically put in there just for quality of life, so that if Anna purples a target that has the healing orb on them, the orb won't just fly away from them, it will stay slow.
That makes sense. I'm happy with that.
Last pro tip, if you're in an area that has like a flat 4 in ceiling and you throw it straight down, you can just have it bounce up and down forever to hold down an area with a healing orb.
Now, just keep in mind the orb's only going to last a total of, 10 seconds?
Which is quite a while, yeah.
So it's a long time. And
also,
by
that time it comes up, you have another one, so forever.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't remember if we mentioned this, but the Biotic Grasp, the primary and secondary fire, the heal can go through enemy barriers, but the damage cannot. Just disclaimer. I don't remember if we covered that.
I don't think we did.
I just wanted to make sure that was.
Yeah, we didn't. But yeah, the healing goes through like everything that's not terrain. It will go through barriers, heroes, anything like that. Damage will just, hit one
And
thing.
it goes through allies too.
Well, yeah, the bullets go through allies, so it's the same principle as that, and it doesn't ignore barriers, so it will just damage them if you're looking at it.
Okay. All right, let's talk about shift or fade.
All right. So in terms of how to use fade, it's basically just wraith form on speed. You go faster, but you are invulnerable less time. The only exception is that you aren't visible and you aren't interactable with teammates. Meaning that like you can put Zarya bubble or healing on a Reaper in Wraith form, but you can't do it with a Moira in Fade.
Mm-hmm.
A Reaper in Wraith form can be affected by things like Transcendence or Lucio's aura. Moira cannot. But it's basically just a super low cooldown ability that makes you invulnerable. It will cleanse most effects. I'll talk about that a bit before we move on. That's very interesting how that interacts. But it's just the stay alive ability. It's what you use when you really need to not die. It's very important to note that while it is useful for getting somewhere quickly, if you find yourself always fading to a teammate to heal them or fading away from a dangerous situation, not because you got dove, but because you're out in the open, you may need to reconsider your positioning. This ability is such a low cooldown and it's so good at what it does that it can breed a lot of very bad habits. And since it's so powerful, if you keep using it as a crutch to your poor positioning, you won't have it when it has the chance to just make a huge play.
To shine, yeah.
And fade out of Diva ult or fade out of Earth Shatter and then coalescence your whole team to keep them alive through it. All of that stuff.
And on the counterpoint of that, you also don't want to be underusing this ability just because it has such a low cooldown that you shouldn't be afraid to use it to catch up to your team if you need to, or to reposition yourself quickly. You'll have it up almost all of the time. Like you said, it's what, 10-second cooldown?
Not even close. It's effectively a 7-second cooldown because including the cast animation and the duration, that's about a second, and then it's 6 seconds after that's ended. So you can use it once every 7.1 seconds, I believe.
There you go. That's probably like 2 or 3 fades, maybe even 4 if the team fight is long, per team fight.
Yeah, you can use it a lot. It's just it's a lot better to have it and not need it than to need and not have it. So I advise caution, but it's something that I also advise recklessness with because it's something you can use so often and it is so versatile that the only way you learn how to use it is by testing its reach. I can't sit here for 30 years and go over every single situation, application of Fade, tell you when it's right and wrong. You have to learn for yourself through experimentation. So Fade all the time, playing if you're not playing to win and you're playing to learn, and then just make sure you're not making that same mistake over and over again. But if you're not going to be that experimental, I just go with that tip I gave you, and also the tip, walk in, fade out. You want to usually be using Fade to get out of a dangerous situation, not get into an aggressive situation.
And that makes a lot of sense. For the most part, you want to use, your own game sense, your own positioning abilities to stay as close and the most appropriate position that you need to effectively heal your team, and hopefully use Fade only to reposition when you get dove or when certain abilities are coming your way, when you get Ana grenaded, for example, like you said, it removes certain debuffs. Or if, for example, one of your teammates, like a Tracer, a Genji, which usually doesn't hang out near you, needs your attention, then you can emergency fade to them and help them out, kind of thing. But I think that you're right. Timing in this ability is super important.
It's just too situational to talk about stuff like that, because there could be 10 million different situations where you could fade to a flanker on the back line, and 8 million of them could be throwing the game, and 2 million could be making a clutch play that saves the game. It's impossible to tell unless you already have a good feel for the situation. So just bear in mind that in general, Fade is a mostly defensive ability, primarily because Moira does not have a tremendous amount of offensive capability herself. And also bear in mind, as we mentioned before, 15-meter range on her left click, that's exactly the same as Mercy's beam. So a lot of the times I see Moira's fading into teammates when they are already in range. Get used to the range, and you'll find yourself not fading as much.
That's a pretty
in
good
that
point.
regard.
All right. Is there anything else you want to add on to Fade before we move on to
Yes.
her biggest
One
ability?
tip. With the way momentum works, while you are in the air, you do not lose momentum nearly as quickly as you do on the ground. It's almost instant that you lose your speed on the ground. But if you jump right before the end of Fade, you will keep your speed until you hit the ground. So if you need to go farther at all, which most of the time you will, it's a good idea to jump right before Fade ends to get that little bit of extra distance. It won't extend your invulnerability, of course, but it will allow you to get a little bit farther, a little bit faster. Also, I do want to talk about the way it interacts, because it is a very interesting ability in terms of how it can remove certain effects. So by and large, it will remove every single negative effect on your character applied by an enemy. Anything like Discord Orb or Maze Freeze Stacks or Graviton Surge Suction, you will be completely invulnerable to those types of effects, and any that's already on you will not be on you any longer. It can also cleanse some allied effects and not other allied effects. Oh, also, it does not cleanse Junkrat's Trap. That's one thing it doesn't cleanse, is a negative effect.
The trap is absolute.
Yes.
Not even the
trap trapped ghosts. It's Junkrat is the 5th Ghostbuster. So yeah, and with teammates, it's very interesting. So on the enemy side, it will cleanse anti-heal from Ana, as I mentioned. However, it will not cleanse Ana's heal buff for whatever reason. That will stay on you after you fade if you've gotten hit by her grenade and she's on your team, that yellow effect that increases the healing you receive. However, it will cleanse Harmony Orb, and it will cleanse a Zarya bubble that is placed onto you. Also, it will not remove aura effects on you immediately. So if you're in Lucio's aura and you fade, you'll keep it for about half of a second before losing it. Same with Transcendence if you're in Transcendence. However, if you fade into that aura, you will not receive it until you come out of Fade.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
And that is all I have to say about Fade.
All right. Awesome.
Coalescence time. Let's get real. Guys.
All right. This is goal number 3, by the way. Spoiler alert.
Yes. This is big. This is
all right.
big.
So Coalescence is the highest damage ability in the entire game. It will kill the entire... No. I don't know who spread this. Damage is... Okay. Think about an uncharged Zarya beam. The sad little pathetic tickle cannon. Wet noodle that can't kill anyone and is just kind of a joke. Zarya's beaming you. You just kind of stop and stare at her like, why are you even trying? Then subtract that by about 30%. Then you have Coalescence's damage. Coalescence's damage is terrible. It's useful, but it's not good. You do not want to focus on damage with Coalescence. So let's back up a bit. Now that I've kind of I wanted to get that out of the way, just in case anyone tuned out during Coalescence. I wish I had done that the first thing. Just said, Coalescence doesn't do damage. All right. So it is a 30-meter range ability that will travel through just about everything, everything but terrain, barriers, heroes, all of that good stuff. And it lasts for 8 seconds, which is important because that's about exactly how long the significant portion of a team fight is. If you look at team fights, generally after about 8 seconds, one team will have a clear advantage over the other. They usually won't be over, but you can tell who's going to win. It will also, it damages 70 damage per second, again, 30% about lower than Zarya's Uncharged Beam, and it will heal for 140 HP per second, which is just under half of Zenyatta's Transcendence, which to say is not the Trump healing that's almost impossible to damage through. You can absolutely damage through Coalescence, but it is a lot of healing. So you can't use it to counter things like Dragon Blade or Tactical Visor outright. However, sometimes you can, and a lot of times you can just keep your tanks alive through an aggressive push. It'll make you faster as well, but let's just think about how we use it in general, piecing together all of this. Bearing in mind, there's also a 1 second cast time delay before it goes off. So first off, with the 1 second cast time and the 8 second duration, that means it effectively lasts about 9.5 seconds after the ending animation, roughly. which is just about the cooldown of your orb. So that means if you have orb, there is absolutely no reason not to throw it beforehand. And since healing orb is generally better than damage orb, we generally want to throw the healing orb first. And you may think, oh, well, isn't that a bit overkill since we're going to be healing everyone a lot anyway? Well, as I mentioned before, the healing is not transcendence level where it just trumps damage. So if you throw on that extra 75 to push it into the 210 range, that's where it does start to outdo things like Dragon Blade and Reaper's Death Blossom. So if you have that, that can be a huge difference maker. Also, it has a 30-meter range. I think this is another thing a lot of Moira's missed out in the memo for. It's not a melee ability. You don't need to charge forward. And in fact, you want to be in the back. If I have Coalescence as a Moira player, you will see me suddenly be like an Anna, except more afraid. I'm in the back. I have like full vision of the fight. I am just purely playing around Coalescencing because it lasts so long. The effective portion of the team fight, I want to use it at the start of an even team fight where neither team looks like they have a massive advantage. I'm just going to use it at the start of a pretty even team fight. We can use it so often that we don't need to be pretty sure it's going to win us the fight, like Transcendence. And again, that's all that really matters is winning the fight. So if it wins us the fight a high enough percentage of the time, that's how we get value from it. Or at the very least, we'll force the enemy to use some of their ultimates, which is also kind of value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Coalescence is an ability like that, right? It's not, like you said, Transcendence, which is such a game-changing ability that can change a tide of battle immediately. It counters so many things. You want to save it for like that specific moment that Genji played, that Zarya Graviton. I feel like with Moira Coalescence, you have a little more, what's the word that I'm looking for? Leniency?
It's more granular.
Granular.
Yeah, it's much more middling. It's not an all or nothing ultimate.
Right.
The best comparison I can draw would be like nano boosting a main tank. It gives your team a massive advantage, but it's not an outright like a short-term trump card like your Dragon Blades or your Transcendence.
It's a lot like Valkyrie, honestly. Like
no,
I
would say Valkyrie is very strong. I would say it's more like a McCree Deadeye, which is an ability that can have an impact on the fight, but you know, the enemy team can still play around it. You still have to respect it. You still have to keep in mind that it's happening, but it's not like your super incredible ability. And like McCree's sometimes use their Deadeye just to reload, for example, or they just throw it out there as soon as they have it because, you know, they'll have
I wouldn't compare it to Deadeye. I'd give it a lot more credit than that. I think Coalescence is an extremely powerful ultimate. And well, like saying it's like Deadeye in the sense that it's not going to hardly ever be the ultimate that just like decides the fight, just like snap, Coalescence come out, 3 people drop, and then the fight's over, or like a Graviton. It's still very powerful, and it's such a proactive ultimate. Deadeye is very often a very reactive ultimate or like a flanky ultimate where you like go on a cheeky little moving platform and pop up behind their team, or you use it against like a Pharah or a Valkyrie Mercy or something like that.
Right.
Coalescence is something you use in a default situation. It's an opener. It's a, you know, very proactive, like their team just went in, I'm going to react in Coalescence and just make our whole team do everything a bit better. It is a bit more like Valkyrie, but a bit more concentrated.
Gotcha. I guess I was saying more for the point when you sometimes initiate with a Deadeye, it can be like that zoning tool. Like if you do it at the beginning of the fight behind your team, your team can kind of move in with that huge thing while the enemy team has kind of have to back up a little bit. With Coalescence, sometimes I feel like you're leading the charge like that a bit. Like your team can move forward, you can stay in the back. The enemy team could choose to engage if they want at the moment, but it's usually a bad idea for them, right? If they're on the losing end, they're fighting against a Coalesced team.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
But I will say we need to mention who you target with Coalescence, because that is very important. So the same rules apply to the healing priority as with your left click. The same damage rules apply as with your right click. You can almost think of Coalescence like you're simultaneously using all, like your left click, your right click, and your orb all together. in one beam. But generally what you're going to do is you're going to be healing whoever the tank that's taking the brunt of the damage while looking from the back. Again, you want to be about 20-ish meters back so you have full view of the fight. You need to switch to like a higher priority target that starts taking damage, but you're going to be hitting the tank in the front and then also hitting your other tank if possible. If not, you want to hit one of two people. Either the enemy's main tank that your team is focusing, or not main tank, but just whoever's in the front that's taking damage, or just throw some beam damage onto an enemy backline member if you can angle it that way, like a McCree or an Ana or a Zenyatta, because what that'll do is it won't kill them, but it will apply enough pressure. 70 DPS is threatening. It's not lethal unless you let it be, but it's enough to make you say, I need to back up. I need to take a bit of cover. I need to get some healing. Because if the enemy Moira is healing their Zenyatta because you have beam on her, you're kind of dealing more damage to the enemy tank by keeping the healing off of them, if that makes sense.
And it's also unblockable too, so you can't hide behind your Ryan. You can't hide behind, your usual barriers.
Absolutely. It also has a partial blinding effect where if you are keeping it on someone who's aim dependent, like a Zenyatta, it doesn't like completely cover their field of view, but that like light flashing across can make it a bit harder to see what's going on, which can lower their accuracy. So to recap with Coalescence, you want to use it at the start of an even fight after throwing your orb so that you are about 20 meters back, focusing on healing above all else and enabling your team to do what they do, while healing your tank and then also kind of damaging either your team's focus target or someone on the back line, and making sure that you switch targets to someone who needs key healing or when you see an opportunity for key damage. So that would be like if your Zenyatta starts getting dove by the enemy team, you want to switch to him to keep him alive because he's a higher priority target. Or if you see a Genji trying to get away with low HP, you can just turn the beam on him and melt him down real quick before switching back.
Cool. That sums up pretty well. Is there any time where you ever use it like as an emergency heal? Like your Roadhog is about to die. Nobody else needs heal, but you can save him with a Coalescence.
So the thing with Coalescence is it charges so quickly because Moira outputs so much numbers that you can often Coalescence twice in the same fight. So if you are not going into a fight with Coalescence, you can very often get it during that fight because you get so much charge. And it's important to just remember this general rule. And this is true for any ultimate. The purpose of an ultimate is not to kill people. It's not to heal people. It's not to stun people. It doesn't matter what hero is, except Crown of Symmetra. It's all about winning a team fight. So if you ever think, for whatever reason, that using your ultimate is going to win your team the fight and be the deciding factor, just use it. It doesn't matter how many people are alive. It doesn't matter how much healing or damage you can output with it. Doesn't matter how many people you'll kill or save. If you think that will decide the fight, just use it. Purely based on your judgment, because that's how you'll learn. That's how you'll learn the very specific situations where you might see me breaking my own rule if you watch me play, where I would not Coalescence at the start of a fight just because I'm making a judgment call, and then Coalescence later when I see a Roadhog get hooked or something.
But that's the beauty of Overwatch, right? It's about being able to read the situation and being able to take the appropriate decision. And the right decision, it's always evolving in this game.
Absolutely.
And outside of Moira's self-sustain with her own orbs, generally speaking, you use the orbs for your allies, but they are a piece of your kit that you benefit from. The orbs can tether to yourself as you move with them. And in addition to that, if you're using your primary fire, aka the Biotic Grasp, where you're leeching, it has a very secondary fire. It has a little bit of a minor leeching effect for health.
30 HP per second. Yes, and it is flat. It's not a percentage of your damage. It is always 30 HP per second. It doesn't matter if you're hitting armor and dealing 25 damage per second, or if you are Orisa Bongo nano boosted and
it doesn't
Mercy damage boosted, it will still heal for that 30 per second. However, if you're like Ana heal grenaded, it will heal for more, I think. So that is important to sustain.
I have no idea.
So if you throw your healing orb on yourself, good thing I mentioned it because we're so certain about it. If you throw your heal orb on yourself and you're right-clicking an enemy hero, you will heal for 105 HP per second, which is quite a lot. So if you combine that with Moira's slender hitbox and doing good erratic micro movement being movement where you're not trying to get somewhere, you're just trying to avoid taking damage.
Dodge.
Yes, dodging, strafing, circle strafing, all of that, 80 spam, all the same thing, really. You will be able to keep yourself alive through quite a lot of stuff. You can even throw like healing orb like along the way you're walking. And since it moves at exactly your walking speed, you can walk with it and be healed the whole time. And the general strategy you'll employ with that, if you're trying to get away from a situation, you'll heal orb along your retreat path, walk with it while moving a bit back and forth and like serpentining to make sure you're not easy to shoot. And then after a couple seconds, it will start to get too far away from you. And then you fade with it and then go past it. And then it'll immediately catch back up to you. And that is how you can kind of get out of situations. If you're getting dove, however, and you're like indoors, you can just throw the healing orb straight down if there's a ceiling above you, and it'll just stay with you like that. Lots of good ways.
And you can also heal yourself during coalescence, which is something that we didn't mention. You get 50 health back per second during coalescence.
I did mention that. Give me credit.
Okay. Well, it was like very, really.
It was an aside, but yeah, it will heal you for 50 HP per second. Which is, of course, a quarter of your life per second, which is quite a lot, making it very hard to kill you. One of the biggest advantages of staying alive in Coalescence is the way you float and angle your hitbox. So, for instance, if you Coalescence and there's a Bastion ult, he can't just shoot your feet and kill you easily. He has to land it like right on your feet or body shot you because you are floating a bit off the ground, which can make it a lot harder to hit you with something like a Junkrat or a Pharah or like Genji multi-shurikens, because you're like floating a bit. You don't have like your feet planted on the ground in like hips length or shoulder length apart. They're like together floating. So you're very hard to kill in Coalescence for quite a number of reasons, in addition to the 50 HP per second regeneration.
Nice. Alrighty, I do wanted to get this community questions in here before we close out the Moira thing. I think that some of them are pretty cool. The first one comes from Anstapa, and he's asking, we've been seeing a lot of Moira with the quad tank comp in Owl. Is it clear that she really thrives in a tank heavy? It is clear that she thrives in a tank heavy comp, but are there any other comps specifically that she has an equally good synergy with? What do you think?
I would say that right now Moira is just super good in almost every comp, regardless of her actual synergy. Well, she's exceptional relative to other main healers due to her AoE healing and clusters for that quad tank comp. She still works very well, particularly with like Reinhardt or a main tankless comp in solo queue. If you're ever figuring out who to pick in that situation, Moira is exceptional for your like Roadhog Diva comp. It's more about who you would say, what is Moira bad with? And I would say she's kind of mediocre with Winston, since it's very difficult to support him on the dive, meaning you'll charge your ultimate very slowly. However, Winston's very good with Coalescence. And with Orisa, I'd say is where Moira struggles the most, because you will generally not be outputting much healing, because Orisa prevents all damage. So you're taking no damage, no damage, no damage, and then all of the damage all at once. So I feel like Anna should be better with Orisa, if Anna just were not bad. Anna, by all rights, should be like the dream character to have with Orisa Roadhog, but Moira is still better because Anna's just bad.
What about characters like Pharah or Genji that are characters that like hanging out pretty far away from the team generally, unless the team fight is going on and then, you know, everybody clusters up. But a lot of the time, you know, they're a little bit out of your range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say the general like thought process when deciding when to pick more, bearing in mind that I'm a bit more, my mindset's more towards like ladder than like, I'm not going to be talking about like Overwatch League comps. This will be like your team, I'll pick their heroes. What healer do I pick?
Yeah.
If you have an Orisa or a Winston, that's minus some points towards if you want to pick Moira. If you do not have one DPS hero that you can reach easily, meaning like Reaper, Soldier, McCree, May, something like just anyone who would be kind of with your team, not like Tracer, Pharah, Genji, Widow.
Widow, yeah.
You just need one of them and you're fine. And then you if you have a Mercy, that's also minus a bit of points. And if you have like all three of those situations in the current meta, that's where I would be uncomfortable picking Moira. Because if you have a Mercy with you, I should have explained this, you don't have any utility. Like Ana has anti-heal and sleep dart, Zenyatta has Discord Orb, Lucio has speed boost, and they all have some type of damage, whereas Mercy does not really have damage or utility, and neither does Moira. So you're kind of going to be overkilling healing and under killing damage. And then also the other point would be for map. Moira struggles on wide open vertical maps like Route 66 or the first 2 points of Gibraltar. Yes. So that would also be a minus towards Moira. I'd say all of those are kind of a -1. If you get to -2, you can consider picking Mercy or Ana instead. If you're at -3, you probably want to pick Mercy or maybe even Ana. Granted, Ana's not very good right now. If she gets buffed, then that will change that. And if you're at -4, that's where you'll want to kind of avoid picking Moira. So if you're like in a dive comp on Route 66, I would absolutely even pick Ana over Moira.
Cool. I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb. And a nice little thing about the maps. Yeah, she tends to struggle with verticality. So maps that demand a lot of verticality tends to be a little struggle for her.
She's so mobile, but she hasn't mastered the up direction.
No, that's not in her arsenal yet. Cool. Let's move on to the second question. This one comes from Silvar Loki. When playing Moira, would you recommend a more aggressive playstyle with her or passive? Are you trying to be more reactive, or are you trying to be the person who's trying to inside your team to go into the battle?
So the way I would look at Moira in terms of answering that question would be like a rattlesnake. You don't aggressively go after people. You kind of poise and wait for an opportunity to strike should it arise. Since you're so focused passively on all of your healing and all of that other stuff you're outputting, like I mentioned, you're just kind of passively aware that I might have an opportunity to get some damage on someone to finish them off or to dive in on someone at the right moment to kill them. You don't actively chase people down and seek it out, but you're ready if that should come up. However, when it comes to charging your ultimate, you can play very aggressively where you're like going way past your team to throw damage orbs, right click people whenever they don't have a Roadhog or a sniper or something that can instantly burst you down, just to charge your ultimate as quickly as possible. However, in team fights, generally, you're going to be like in the back. Let me just give positional rules so I can do that. You'll be about, I'd say, 12 meters behind your front line, trying to see as much of your team as possible, hiding from the enemy with terrain if possible, making sure you're keeping as much vision and awareness of your team as you can. So from that state, that is where you'll be most of the time. You'll be just focused on playing defensively, healing, keeping people alive, keeping your team in the fight. But if someone gets too close and overextends a bit, you can pounce on them with like a damage orb and a right click to just melt them down out of nowhere.
Nice. I like that. Yeah, like every hero, there's times to get aggressive, times to be a little more passive. With Moira, you want to be more on the passive side until you see the opportunity. Well put. Last question from Winston Smith. I often run out of healing, particularly if a tank line is doing well and I can't see enemies easily. What's your approach to getting damage in to recharge your heal in this situation?
So a lot of the time, it's unfortunately in that situation, it's a pretty tough economy. And instead of, increasing your heal resource, you have to be a bit more frugal. A lot of the time in that very tank-heavy matchup where there's like an Orisa shield or a Reinhardt shield you can't right-click past, you just have to be more frugal. Focus hard on using Healing Orb to sustain people and using just small spritzes instead of spraying on people. That's something that a lot of Moira players I noticed don't do. You absolutely do not have to, nor do you want to, hold down the heal for even a second when you are just healing some chip damage. Even if they're at like half health, you can just spritz them, wait a couple seconds, spritz them again, and then your other healer will help top them off as well.
Very nice. And I would argue that if your tank line is doing so well that you don't even see enemies around you, then not having heal is not much of a problem either. Alrighty.
All right, guys. I think that's going to do it for this section of the show. We need to get through a quick. This is going to be a little bit more of non-exhaustive of how we feel because with the new hero Brigitte or Heroes 27 that they announced this week. And there are also some patch notes which we are not going over today because everything from the patch notes is stuff that came from the last PTR, which we had covered extensively. So all I want to do is talk about. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say that as a disclaimer to this talk preemptively, we are all masters of this character that's not out yet. We all have about 250 hours apiece on this character.
We have not left PTR.
Everything there is to know about her place in the meta. We've scrimmed extensively with all of the best teams. So
yes.
You know it.
And given that there are lots of things going on in Overwatch League right now that is a lot of people are using to inform their decisions, and we also have a brand new patch that is very different with how Sombra and Doomfist even operate right now, along with a couple other patch changes that should be coming in prior to Overwatch League's third stage. We're going to have a lot of developing metas that change, and people have varying opinions. Now, Brigitte is also very not finished right now. There's tons of bugs right now from what I've been reading and talking with players. Top levels, the lower levels, doesn't matter. So here's the quick rundown. She has 250 health as a support hero, and 50 of it is armor. Her main weapon is a form of melee weapon called a rocket flail. It does 35 damage a hit, and you can hit somebody about twice in a second. Does so about 70 damage per second. And it will trigger her passive called Inspire, which we'll get to in just a second, but has a 6-meter range. So it's very, very, very close. It's 1 meter short of Symmetra Beam, is kind of to give you an idea. And has kind of a frontal cone-like ability and hit registry. It's very similar to Reinhardt's hitbox with the hammer. Now, what is Inspire? Well, Inspire is basically if you hit an enemy with your flail, whether it's with the whip shot, which is the next ability we'll go over, or the primary fire, which is the flail, it'll heal people within 20 meters, 11 health per second for 5 total seconds. And will refresh the 5-second timer every strike that you land. So it's about 80 health in 6 seconds. That's kind of the general idea. As you look through this, the whip shot is also her shift ability, and this is a 70 damage nuke, I guess is her biggest damage ability, and it has a significant range of 20 meters with a 4-second cooldown and has a large knockback. And this can be applied to Winston when he jumps, or when somebody charges like a rocket punch or a Reinhardt charge, you can knock them aside with this. And it can only hit one target, but it is aimed. So you have to actually land this one. It does not have a really crazy like range hitbox similar to the rocket flail. Then she has a primary heal, which is a repair pack that she can give 150 health every 6 seconds. And if there's any measure of overhealing, or if the target is full, it will give armor. And if the target is full, it will give 75 armor. But the armor will deplete after 5 seconds if no damage is taken, or if any damage is taken, the remainder of the armor will be depleted after 5 seconds. She also has a right-click ability, or a alternate fire ability that is the same as Reinhardt. It is a shield. The shield is significantly smaller in both size and in scope. It's 600 shield. It recharges. The recharge, like when you've taken damage with it or it breaks, will start after 2 seconds. And 4 seconds after it shatters. And that's when the recharge begins and not when the recharge is finished. It takes about 6 to 8 full seconds from not doing anything when the thing is charging to be all the way back up to 600 health. And then if you have the shield, you have a shield bash ability, which is a 6-meter dash forward with a half-second stun and a 5-second cooldown and does 50 damage. And you can only use this with the shield. So that's a lot of information, but basically a lot of players are utilizing the kit in that you can hit a couple shots, you can dash forward to close the gap and stun people, and this stuns Reinhardt through his shield. You can bash his shield with your shield and stun him, which is crazy. And you can also stun Genjis when they're in deflect, from what I understand, but they won't take any damage. I haven't tested this intuitively, so Fu, you can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I did a little bit of testing as much as I could, try to prep for the show notes. But as he said, we're definitely 200-hour masters on the PTR right now.
Yeah, none of this is
ultimate,
speculation. None of it. It's all 100% objective fact.
Pretty much. All right, no, and then we have the rally.
Yeah.
Which, Fu, do you want to explain the rally and then kind of share your thoughts?
Sure. So it's a 7-meter range that grants everyone around her, including her, 45 armor per second, up to a max of 150. It can stack with ability armor, meaning that it can go up to 225, since the only other ability armor is Torbjorn's 75 armor pack. If there are more armor heroes added later, I assume that would be the hard cap, and it lasts for 10 seconds. So I will say that I am thrilled for a number of reasons that this hero is happening, one of which being that I actually designed a melee support that was surprisingly similar to this. So I'm going to take full credit. Blizzard, expect a check in the mail. But yeah, I had a mini shield. I had her ultimate being giving teammates armor. Granted, it worked in a different way. It was an area of effect turning all of allies' HP bars into armor. This is probably a bit of a better way to do that. And then I had like very peel-based, immobile, but can knock you back and mess you up while healing people. So I really like it that they're adding it to the game. I don't know if the iteration of it is very good yet, but I don't know that it's not good. So I like to wait and see on it.
Andres, you are muted.
I was thought it might be me for a second.
My bad. I was gonna say that I'm really glad that they incorporated another support so soon, right after Moira, because we all know that supports are lacking a little love. For a long time, we had to deal with only 4 supports because nobody ever counted Symmetra as a real support.
Can I rant for a second?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I was so angry because they were only the game. They didn't want the game to release with 3 supports. So they just threw Symmetra in there, and then DPS was so popular, so they kept releasing it. And then Anna had immediately gotten like nerfed into the ground after having a meta for her. And then they were like, okay, here's Sombra, who can instantly kill Zenyatta because it's thematic, I guess. So screw Zenyatta. And then we're gonna like rework Lucio, and then we're going to like just nerf supports. Every time supports are a bit too strong, just huge nerfs. And then they make Doomfist, which is a character that's just completely designed to just destroy supports. And then at the lowest point, they reworked Mercy, making her like horrible to play against and even as, but had that awesome movement bug, and they took it out, and then also took out Lucio's speed for no reason. And then everyone just felt like support was over. It's like they just keep crapping on our quality of life. They keep adding in heroes to counter supports, and it's just no one wants to play support. And that effect is still in. It's so hard to get double support games on ladder sometimes. Even at Maya Sarek playing only support, I solo heal sometimes. And now they added Moira, who is like able to deal with flankers and dodge and fend for herself and had a lot of healing. And then they added, another hero. Now they're going to Brigitte with another support. They're like actually hearing us, and they even like re-added Mercy's mobility slightly and Lucio's mobility slightly, so that they're hearing people and they're actually saying, okay, we do actually care about support players. They're not just fodder. So I'm super happy they're actually adding this. There's still a laundry list of complaints I'd like to see them fix, like, why does Discord Orb not track damage, but Doomfist gets to know how many barriers he has? Is that really more important to know? Like, why can't I hit tab and see how much damage Discord is dealt? Why can't I hit tab and see how many meters speed boost has caused to travel? Or just some other inane stat to like help keep track?
I'm sure that eventually a lot of quality of life changes, especially specific quality of life changes that certain players want on their heroes, will come. But I'm just excited that they're incorporating a support hero that is quite different from all the others. This one seems like a brawler, almost like a bruiser support. She's tanky,
yeah, very bruisery.
She's supporty.
Yeah, they can fend for themselves.
Yeah, she can fend for herself and for her teammates around her. She's like a mini Rhine that your Ana can have, right? They can watch out for her.
She's the peel support.
She's a mini Rhine that can watch out for your Rhine.
I specifically designed a character to be the peel support, and then Blizzard has made a very different version of that.
Definitely. And
So
everything
I'm
in her
happy.
kit seems peely, right? Like she has the shield bash that stuns and back knocks you backwards. She has what I call the reverse roadhog hook, because that's what it seems, right? It seems like a roadhog hook that instead of hooking you towards you, it just knocks you away. But it seems to kind of act in the same
She's
behavior.
so much utility.
Yeah, it's like a stiff arm, just like push you away, just stay over there at a safe distance. And I like the way her left click works with her healing, because even with Moira, who has a very good peeling and very good survivability against flankers, you do have to choose between putting some pathetic damage on the flanker or healing your support. So if the flanker already got on your support, you just have to heal until they like run out of ammo or whatever.
Right.
Whereas with Brigitte, like you're kind of like, I am actually like getting in front of you and protecting you and like scaring this Genji off without having it be
you're pressuring the damage. You're also providing durability to your support. You have the health pack and able to do it in a quick like second.
Yeah, and it's kind of in between. It's not like you are healing for Moira level healing per second and damaging Zenyatta damage per second. You're dealing like, Moira damage and Zenyatta healing at the same time.
And for example, for characters like McCree, Brigitte is gonna be such a nice hero to be around, because as McCree, you love hugging pillars already, right? You always like being behind a surface that you can kind of poke out and come out and do things. And Brigitte is almost like the perfect pillar, right? You can stand behind her. She can cover for you. She can heal you. If anyone dives you, she can stun and flashbang. Basically, anyone who dives in, it's going in for a bad time.
I think this opens up team comps quite a bit. Like it used to be like there was Deathball Dive and then Orisa Hog kind of became its own little thing. I feel like protect the blank comps like you might have in a Dota style game.
Yeah.
You can have in Overwatch. The only problem is right now I don't think we have a hero worth protecting right now outside of maybe Zenyatta. McCree or Soldier would seem like an obvious fit, but they're a bit weak right now, especially McCree. But if you look,
too immobile.
Bastion's too immobile.
Unless
Reaper's
you're AKM,
too forward.
in that case, it is definitely worth protecting.
What do you guys think about Doomfist with this kind of an idea? Because this is something I've been theory crafting quite a bit.
I hate Doomfist, so I'm just stating that bias. I despise Doomfist. Oh, just dodge the fizz. If he hits you with any one ability as a support, and you're guaranteed dead if the Doomfist knows what he's doing. Any ability, it doesn't matter which one, you are instantly dead. It's so dumb. I would delete that character without a second thought if I had the opportunity.
Because I'm pretty sure with the armor that Brigitte doesn't die if Doomfist gets a fully charged punch on her.
Yeah, but he still just left clicks her, and it does anyway, so who cares? If Doomfist does not guaranteed one-shot Brigitte, they will buff Doomfist or nerf Brigitte just in some way to specifically allow to happen. It'll be like Doomfist now does bonus damage against targets with 50 armor.
Now I want to. Okay, let's transition out of this. This is going down a path we don't need to go.
Smart choice.
The ultimate I want to mention is something that's really intriguing to me. Because all of the armor that you gain from Rally does not count. Like when Brigitte gives you armor with the topped off health and it gives you the armor or the armor from Rally, it does not count in a healing meter. There's actually a tracked armor given stat similar to Torbjorn.
Mm-hmm.
And second, from what I can tell, some people are just using Rally after they've regrouped before they engage.
Yeah.
So you basically get the entirety of the armor from Rally on every single person in your team, and then Rally ends and you go in.
Yeah, I gotta say, Rally is probably my least favorite part of her kit, because it seems way too weak to be a defensive ultimate, and it seems weak in general in the middle of a fight, unless it's like a very solo queue ult that's like hard countered by focus. Unless you cheese it somehow by like ulting before the fight starts. And I don't think that's like a very healthy dynamic to like, all right, everyone gather up by the campfire and hear the story about how armor exists and now let's go fight. Like, I don't know if I like that as a mechanic.
I think it's
perhaps there should be like...
I don't know. It seems a little underwhelming right now, but it remains to be seen because it's an ultimate that can really provide a lot to teams like death poly teams, like guys like Reaper, or a team that is like focused on the triple tank, for example, like taking those guys out with a rally behind them is gonna be borderline impossible.
Yeah, I mean, you have Tracers running around with 300 health and half of its armor. Like, that's scary.
But at the same time, that
sticks.
Tracer's running around against the armor. She isn't going to do anything, which is nice. Anything that Shadow nerfs Tracer, I can't be too upset with, because they're never going to actually nerf Tracer.
But
just Shadow nerf her to oblivion.
I think that even more powerful than that is that it sticks, like Transcendence or Sound Barrier. Those are momentary and give you a huge boost in health, which is extremely helpful. We can't argue about that. But once they're gone, they're gone. With this one,
it's more Valkyrie-like.
Yeah, your Tracer that didn't take any damage during the fight, but still got part of the ultimate, now is going into the next team fight with like 500 health or something like that, or 400 health.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it'll only be 100, 150 in addition. I mean, you can throw in Torbjorn, but that's probably a bad idea. So just add 150 armor. Some nerd needs to, calling all nerds like me who aren't lazy like me. I want someone to compile the damage values of Overwatch, combine them with pick rates, and figure out how much armor is equivalent to health. Like what, like, you know, one armor is like what, 1.3 health on average or something like that, and then maybe we can figure it out, because if it's not, like, if 45 armor is not equivalent to 60 HP, can we say that this is worse than Valkyrie? Like, Valkyrie is not very good right now, and if it's not, armor is not that much more valuable, then that would make Brigitte a very niche like anti-granular damage character, like for like Diva Winston Tracer.
Here's what I was thinking with regards to that, because I also felt like Rally's really, really, really weak sauce right now, is that what you're doing is you're basically trading the overall typical dichotomy in Overwatch, which is every hero's ultimate, when you get it, is really good. And you basically give Brigitte like everything else. You know what I mean? Like everything else in her kit is extreme utility, displacement, blocking, healing, damage, utility of stun, and even a little bit of shielding, how albeit niche, and also overall survivability of herself and her teammates. And then Rally just kind of is like the icing on everything else. And rather than being like this one ability, like
it's also like
extremely powerful, right?
It's also important to note 7-meter range. That's significantly less than Lucio's aura.
Yeah,
if you take into account, you know, pi and other such nonsense, that's about half of the area of Lucio's aura. And Lucio is a mobile character. Brigitte has almost no mobility.
You have to be quite close. Yeah, I agree.
I feel like Rally should give her some type...
She gets a little bit of mobility with the Rally.
Does she? Oh, maybe. It didn't read on.
They increase her speed with it.
Okay. Okay, I was about to say, I feel like they should do that. But yeah, if they have already.
They do.
But even still, like 7-meter range is kind of low, especially since you can't micromanage it very well. If you're a bit faster, that helps. But you just have to play test it. So I'll just say my initial impression is that. I mean, my 250-hour in impression is that. But it could change when other people, you know, play her in coordinated environments. It could be the new Valkyrie, old Valkyrie, that is, when it was obviously broken. But some people thought it was worse than old Rez. That could be me with Rally. It could turn out to be the most broken ult in the game, and I just don't know what I'm talking about. We'll see.
It just depends.
Nobody
it's all
knows
like
now.
Contingent on how powerful armor is for a full team, and if a lot of the team that you're using Rally can gain that benefit, right? Like the overall durability of it. Because you're also gaining armor, and if you gain armor outside of the fight, that means everyone has it going in, or you're using it mid-fight when people are low, so you're giving them armor so that your healers, including yourself, are also catching up. You're basically doing armor and healing simultaneously. So it's kind of this weird dichotomy, but I think what we're going to be confirming here, if anything, is that we need a lot more testing because this is super new, very cool. We're all super excited.
Yeah.
As we're moving through things, I think we got to figure out how to end the show. So let's do that. We have no new iTunes reviews this week. If you guys want to support us, head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star iTunes review, and we will read those and take in all of your feedback. It also helps us get found in the iTunes store. If you want to support us monetarily, we are Twitch affiliates on Omnic Lab's Twitch feed, which is twitch.tv/OmnicLab. If you want to support us in another way, you can head over to our Patreon. That is the one thing we talked about with our sponsors at the beginning of the show, but it helps us so much getting little mobile recording units so Andres can go places and record things in live interviews, as well as myself. I'd like to invest in getting one, but I also have to afford going to BlizzCon and finding tickets as a whole. So that helps me a lot, especially. So any level of monetary value you bring to us as the show is infinitely valuable, even if it's only for a short time. We really appreciate it, and I mean that. We just got our payout for the last month, and it's been great to see some new faces and some old faces kind of coming back and forth here and there. And a shout out to Infinite Noah, who actually had to pull out of his pledge after being a patron for so long. Just had his first kid, and we're now working 2 jobs and trying to make ends meet. And I really appreciate him. Like, he was one of my duo queue partners for the longest time. So shout out to him. Good luck with the kid, and congrats.
Yeah, congratulations for the kid. Thank you for all the support, man. We truly appreciate it.
Really appreciate that. Yeah. So if you want to find us, head over to the website. That's omniclab.com/links. You can find anything and everything you want. You can click the tab for watching the live show there. You can find anything else that you're looking for. If you want to join our Discord community to find out when the game nights are going on, you can ask any member. Admins and mods are always on, always helpful. That's at discord.me/omniclab. You can even see Fu there if you have a quick question and he happens to be online. Maybe you can find him there, and try not to tag people who are the guests. It does help, but you can also see if he's online, and you can just ask in a chat and maybe somebody will respond. And you can also see when our past guests are streaming. That's going to do it for where you can find the show. Andres, where can people find you?
If you personally want to find me, you can look me up on Twitter at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games. And you can also find me discussing Overwatch League over on the Overwatch League Recap, or Owl Recap, with Bob, Mel, and Justin. We will be going live next Monday if you guys want to catch us.
And Fu, why don't you tell people a little bit about what you do with Wawas?
Absolutely. So I am Fu #0999 on Discord. You can find me on Wawa's Bootcamp, or I guess I'll be in the Omnic Labs Discord as well. Wawa's Bootcamp is an awesome large community that offers free coaching to anyone and everyone who wants it, from high level players. I coach all of the healers on there except Brigitte at the moment, because she doesn't exist on live yet. So you can definitely go there as long as you're in one of the servers. Feel free to message me, ask me questions. I won't mind. I really appreciate just letting me know how I did here. I always like feedback on that. You can go on iTunes and just say I did really well or really poorly. I'll cry one way or the other. Just one rating equals 1 tier. Joy or despair, that's up to you.
5 stars for 5 tiers. Oh dear.
Yeah, definitely highly recommend you check out Wawa's Bootcamp. We need some new faces. We've been a bit stagnant for a while. It's a great welcoming community. Everyone's nice. You can get coaching there to help you in any degree, whether you want something involved like VOD review or you just want general advice or tips. There's even an awesome Ask Pro Coaches section that's very helpful, where you can just ask the coaches pretty much anything. Like, how do I use May's right click at distance or something like that? Maybe someone will answer.
Absolutely. I definitely recommend everyone to go check it out. We have a few members of the community that have tried it out, and they have said very nice things. Rob is one of them. I know that you guys do awesome coaching. Yeah, you guys do awesome coaching. And if you guys liked what Fu had to say over here, that's the place where you can find him and get him to actually personally coach you, especially if you want to go down the support route, which, it's a tough route. It's full of hurt. And it's a rocky road, but if you do decide to be a support, here's your chance. Here's your tools.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to do it for the show, guys. It's number 93. Fu, thanks for joining us, my man. It's been a pleasure. You can catch him.
It's been a pleasure, likewise.
And you can catch him at Wawa's Bootcamp, as well as many other coaches and at every role and every hero. That's going to do it, guys. Remember, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Thanks for everyone in the chat. You guys always rock. Mel. Oh, Never Clutch is here. What's up? Yes, heard a disappointment. I'm not saying that being a support is bad. I'm just saying that it's a tough road, you know? You're gonna have a lot of hecklers out there in comp.
I have nothing more to teach you. The rest you must learn for yourself. Walk in harmony, my student.
Oh. No.
Bye.
Well, song rest for us. All right, guys. It's been a pleasure. Later.